Not much is happening in Warframe lately due to the lead up to TennoCon, so I wanted to take a look at one of my favourite additions from 2017. These are level 100 Corrupted Heavy Gunners. And these are level 100 Corrupted Heavy Gunners after the Lenz is through with them. Any questions? I mean, I kind of hope so, that's sort of the point of these videos. The Lenz, spelled with a Z because Zs are cool or something, can be researched at your clan dojo's energy lab. After research, the blueprint can be purchased for 50,000 credits, and building it in the foundry will cost a further 25,000 credits, as well as 10 field run, 8,200 alloy plates, 2,400 cryotic, and 3 nitane extract. It also carries with it a mastery rank requirement of 8. Two things should strike you about the Lenz pretty immediately. One is how slow it is compared to other bows, and the other is that it makes a giant spherical death ball on impact that looks absolutely amazing. That alone would be enough for me to really like this thing, but it doesn't stop there. This thing hits every bit as hard as it looks like it should. It has a slow charge time, taking 1.2 seconds to fully charge, and like the Daikyu cannot be shot on a partial charge, and can't be held at full draw for long. In exchange, however, every Lenz shot is a cryo-explosive round that carries 3 damage components. 50 impact damage for a direct hit, 10 cold damage with a guaranteed cold status proc for the first stage energy sphere, and 660 blast damage for the final explosion. Needless to say, the final explosion does most of the work, and is boosted by a 50% critical chance, allowing for double orange crits with point strike and a 2.0 times critical damage multiplier. Added elemental mods will apply to all 3 of these individually as well. Its status chance seems fairly weak at 5%, though the explosive stage does seem capable of adding more elemental stat effects than the reported 5% would suggest, which leads me to believe it also shares similarities with the Sonic Core in that regard. More pressingly, the Lenz has a maximum ammo pool of just 6 shots at once, which greatly limits its ability to be used at long range for any length of time. Digital Extremes was forward-thinking on this, however, and the Lenz has innate arrow conversion, allowing you to pick up other ammunition types to restore 1 round each to keep you going. On top of all of that, the Lenz comes with 2 Narrowmon polarities in its mod slots by default, which is a nice bonus. It would be nice if one or both of these was a Madurai polarity instead, but considering that the Lenz requires no forma to build, I can't really complain about that too much. The Lenz is unable to equip the Firestorm mod to increase its blast radius. At first, this was mildly upsetting, but after using it for the first time I was very quick to understand why. Its default blast radius measures in at approximately 6 meters, which is already quite substantial on its own. If it could equip Firestorm, it would probably break the game slightly, not to mention make it even more of a liability in close quarters. Oddly, the final blast seems to extend ever so slightly further than the first cryogenic blast, but for the most part the energy sphere is a good indication of the death zone you don't want to be standing in when it goes off. This is another thing that I really like about the Lenz too. Its heavily stylized explosive charge gives you a clear visual indication on where it is and isn't safe to be standing, and the staggered 2-stage explosive blast gives you a brief window to get out of range if you make a mistake and get caught in its range, as opposed to most explosives where your warning that you're too close is the bleed out timer or the revive screen. Plus, people much better able to think outside the box than I am also pointed out that you can use your spoiler mode to avoid killing yourself with your own Lenz as well. If you don't know what I'm referring to when I say a spoiler mode, then go and do the second Dream and War Within quests. When modding the Lenz, I consider heavy caliber to be a good choice. On other bows I would never touch that mod, but the Lenz being an area explosive weapon means that its added base damage is very helpful, and the reduced accuracy can also actually be a benefit, allowing multi-shot projectiles to spread out the pain over a slightly wider area. Or, if you're very lucky, have one hit a nearby terrain feature to deal with a nearby group of enemies, and the other to continue into the distance to hit a second group of enemies. In addition to that, Hunter munitions, added to the game after the Lenz during the first Plague Star event, and then later available through Ghoul missions, lets the lens shine brightly at higher levels by giving it a chance to give enemies extremely high damage over time from slash status effects on critical hits, and combined with viral status effects to cut enemy health in half, effectively doubling all damage for the viral effect duration, turns the lens into something of a destroyer of worlds. This may or may not remain a viable approach forever though, depending on how damage 2.5 ends up working. The good news is that if you are the type to use different elemental combos for different factions, you can use the primed Bane mods to do almost as good of a job on anything up to and including sortie level enemies. The bad news is that if you like to do insane endurance survival runs, it will begin to suffer greatly beyond that point without hunter munitions as it currently stands, becoming a waste of time against level 150 heavy units that the hunter munitions and viral combination can still currently handle with ease. But that is admittedly something of an edge case that most people will never be dealing with. I find that, like other explosive launchers, it encourages a more airborne playstyle. Since it's a better idea to aim for the ground the enemies are standing on rather than going for direct hits, I gravitate towards jumping far more than I do with more conventional weapons to facilitate a better angle of attack, which I find to be a nice change of pace. Though it admittedly probably makes observation more difficult due to how you'll be bouncing all over the place. The only thing that really bothers me is how short the lower limb is. I can understand going for an asymmetric appearance like the Daikyu, based on the real-life Japanese Yumi Great Bow, but it's just so stubby. I think it would have looked much better if the lower limb were about 2/3 the length of the upper limb instead of about the 1/3 it is now. Whoever came up with this might need to be introduced to the concept of the golden ratio. Still, if my only real complaint is a minor aesthetic one most people wouldn't notice or care about, I think that's probably a good sign. If you haven't used the lens by now, I highly recommend it. It's unique, it has an incredible level of power behind it, and, more subjectively, it's stylish and a ton of fun. Warframe got a lot of cool toys in 2017, but this one is probably my favourite. Thank you for watching my overview of the lens. All comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you around next time. If you liked this video, then please consider giving one of my other videos linked here a watch, and as usual, good luck, have fun, and take care.